Welcome back to another lap guide for GT4s. This is going to be week 12 around Zolder and the Porsche. Zolder is definitely going to be a challenging track for everybody to learn if you haven't been here before, and if you're trying to find more space, it will be once again difficult to learn. Zolder is consisted of some medium speed sweepers, and then we have 3 chicanes that all drive a little bit differently. We're definitely going to go over those. Now this is going to be a very hard track to pass at. There's not a lot of passing opportunities short of dive bombing somebody into any of the heavy braking zones. So we're definitely going to focus on getting really good exits. I also really want to prioritize qualifying performance. The better you qualify, the easier it's going to be to avoid any of the carnage into turn 1 and turn 2 especially. As long as we're getting good exits out of the chicanes, that's going to prevent and hold everyone off from behind trying to chase you into the braking zone and being able to send that move. So with that being said, it definitely drives a little bit like Monaco to me, even though it's an actual racetrack and not a street circuit. Now with that being said, we're going to jump into our reference lap here. Coming down our start-finish straight, we want to keep an eye out for this little box on the right hand side. At least that's the visual reference I'm using. We can also use this sign, but I found it a little bit hard to gauge. This is a little bit closer to eye level for me. Now we want to brake about a car to a car and a half length before that sign. We're going to keep it pretty wide on entry. We want to get an early downshift into 4th gear, and then we'll downshift once more into 3rd to help get that rotation. Now something to note, this corner can be a little deceiving. Right here where this line starts to bend, that looks like where the corner is starting initially. Now our apex point is actually going to be way farther on the track. So make sure we're not creeping in with that steering wheel, turning in a little too early. That's going to increase the steering arc that you have, and it's going to lower your mile per hour. So we definitely want to make sure we're carrying as much speed as possible through here. Now we can get right up on the curbing. I missed it a little bit here, but that's alright. And we can track out and get on throttle pretty early all the way right side tires onto the green patch. Now coming into turn 2, this is going to be a little tricky to find your braking zone. Now we can use the start of the gravel trap here on the left hand side. It might be a little bit difficult to identify while you're driving at speed. So for me, once I come off that curbing on the right hand side and start making my way left, as soon as I get the car straight and I can see both of these radiuses coming into turn 2, that's how I identify my braking zone. Now coming in here, we kind of want to treat this arc where if we're from the left hand side, if we want to follow this line into our apex. Now we can use our blend line here as a reference of how far or how close we want to be to it in correlation to coming into turn 2. So this lap I'm about a half of a car width off that blend line. When you're looking at it inside the cockpit, it will line up from the left hand side of track all the way to apex of turn 2 with that blend line being right in the center. Now something else I want to note, this should be our reference for track out in turn 2. If you find that you're getting all the way to track out where this bumpy stuff is on the curbing, that means you didn't turn enough or you started to turn too soon. So we want to make sure that we're getting out to here. That'll be a good indication or a checkpoint for you to identify or verify, that turn 2 was handled properly. We're going to hold a steering angle from track out all the way through here, leading out to track out. Coming up to our next corner, we want to use this grass in between the 2 emergency roads as our reference. So once we come up to this grass, we can get on moderate brake pressure. And we're going to downshift into 4th gear pretty early. That's going to help get all that weight on the front axle, get the car rotated. Now our green patch here is going to be our apex reference. As long as we're getting to this point and we have the car angled to the right and not necessarily to straight ahead, we can get on throttle right at apex or either right before. That should give you still plenty of room on track out before you start to go into the gravel. Now you can dip your left side tires into the gravel ever so slightly without getting that off track. Now, coming up to our first chicane, we can use that 100 board as a braking reference. We can also use this lighter gray patch in the asphalt as our braking reference. Depending on the lap, you can brake right in the center of this section, or if your tires are a little bit hot, if you feel like you're getting a lot of understeer through the 3 previous corners, then you might want to brake a little bit earlier here. We're going to delay our downshifts coming into this corner. So that 4th gear downshift happened right before we started to turn in, and 3rd gear downshift happened right at turn in. This is going to be important to get that rotation. This chicane is especially tricky. If we're hitting this turtle right here on the left hand side, the car will want to jump, and then the same goes for our right hand side here. So I actually do catch a little bit of air on this one. Ideally, we want our right side tires to sweep right past it, but on the candy cane curbs. The other thing to note, we want to get ideally on the back side of our apex. That's going to let us get on throttle as early as possible without hitting any of the gnarly bumps, and then it'll also let us drive straight through this chicane. Now after that, we're going to come up the hill, down the hill, and to the left. Now my braking reference here is going to be as soon as the car straightens out and is parallel with our left-hand side white line. There's not much to go off of otherwise. I haven't found any visual references other than potentially where the red and white paint starts to happen on the wall, but I feel like that's a little too late. We're going to get on the brakes very aggressively, about 80 to 85%, and then we want to delay our downshifts pretty late. So if we back this up one more time, we're going to play this in slow speed. So 5th down to 4th, 3rd, and then we're going to wait for 2nd until we turn in. The trick for this chicane is once again to be on the back side, on the right hand side, and then we actually want to get a very early turn in. As long as our right side tires are on our red and white painted strip here, that means we got enough rotation and we're setting up the car nicely for our next right-hander. In other words, we want to compromise, and then set our next corner up as best as possible. So looking at this from an aerial view, compromise, instead of tracking out, we'll compromise and stay tight. That's going to open up our next right-hander. Let us get on throttle very early and then be flat out through this next section. Now our next turn is going to be a hairpin. It's very important to get the car slowed down early, make sure we get the rotation into the car, and get that good apex. Now again, we want to use that downshift timing to help us not only get the car slowed down, but get it rotated at turn-in. We can also abuse a little bit of our track out here. Even though this matches the dirt on the left-hand side, this is a little bit of rumble stripping. So we can put our left side tires on here, and then cross them onto our red and white painted surface. Now coming up to the last chicane, this one's arguably the hardest to get right. So our braking reference, at least for me, is going to be between this 100 board and our actual billboard over the track. I like to brake closer to the sign as possible. We're going to downshift again, delayed into our braking zone, but we also want to be pretty rapid with our downshift. So it'll be 5, 4, 3, 2. That 2nd gear downshift will help us rotate into this corner. Now I didn't do the best job setting this first left-hander up. Ideally, we want the car pointed even a little bit farther to the left, pointed more so to this black sign on the fencing. That's going to help get the car opened up for this next right-hander and get you on throttle the soonest as possible. We also want to try to avoid, once again, these white turtle curbs here that will launch your car. And then coming into this section, we can actually drive over these ones. We can also utilize this brown curbing once again. You're not going to get an off track here. Now if you go any farther to the right than these drain grates, you will risk not only an incident but potentially a slowdown as well. And then on track out, I don't get on throttle as early as I could have here, but we can drive our left side tires onto the brown curbing once again, and then down the start finish straight. Now something we do need to go over is some slowdowns through our chicanes. If our left side tires are touching the green patches on the right hand side here, or the left hand side here, excuse me, if our left hand side tires are touching green here, or our right side tires touching green on this section of the chicane, you will be getting a slowdown, and they are not friendly. It's about a second and a half, maybe more, depending on how much of the track you cut. And then the same is going to go for our first chicane. So backing up to that one as well. So we want to make sure that our left side tires, they can get into the green. Our right side tires cannot go any farther than on the red and white section. The same will go for exit. And something I didn't mention the first time we went over this, it's very tricky to get the car turned in here. If you go too wide, you're better off backing out and either tucking in or making sure that you can get ahead of the car that's trying to pass, or if you're passing, you get ahead of the car that is trying to defend. If we don't get the rotation here and we wind up going straight off, not only will the car jump and get that slowdown, I found it extremely difficult to catch on exit, and that normally resulted in the car spinning. So something to definitely keep an eye out. You actually might want to test that and intentionally drive through here during your practice laps just so you know what it feels like. Other than that, that's going to be our lap guide for Zolder Week 12. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment on this video, or you can PM me in our Discord channel. Otherwise, best of luck, as always, in your guys' weekly officials.
That was your fastest lap of the session.